We'll open this meeting of the Pittsburgh City Commission with the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Reverend Johnson?
He's like, how do I get up there? Probably should have had him up.
I think for as many people that are here, he ought to pass the basket.
Christmas. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, we ask you into our presence this evening as we discuss matters concerning this community, that each one be heard, that they would be acknowledged, Lord. And Lord, that all the decisions made by the commissioners, that they would be one guided for the best of all concerned. We pray that each one will remain in peace, that there will, Lord, it will rest upon each one here. We pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. The public input this evening, opening it up, is not going to include the KDOT people are talking about the U.S. highway. This is public input for the city itself. So is there any public input for the city? Seeing none, we'll move on to, I have a proclamation here for the Foster Care Month. Is there anyone representing the Foster Care Month, folks? No? Okay.
They have them home.
Nope.
No one? Okay. Well, we're going to move on to the consent agenda then. Any problems with the consent agenda on either side? None? Seeing none, we'll ask for a roll call vote.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
It's been moved and seconded to approve. All in favor, roll call vote.
Brooks?
Yes.
Height?
Yes.
McNay?
Yes.
Munsell?
Yes.
Sigley?
Yes. The next order of business is to consider the following. Consider approval of ordinance number G1348, annexing land into the limits and boundaries of the city of Pittsburgh, Kansas pursuant to KSA 12-520.
Mayor, City Commissioners, we received a request from Heritage Tractor to annex into the city. I believe Jeremy made it to the front. Jeremy Knuth is here if you have any questions. The ordinance before you is to set the boundaries and accept them at your will.
Thanks. Appreciate your time on the or appreciate having time for us on the agenda. We feel like we've been a part of the city for quite some time, but we have plans for growth and those kinds of things, and so we would like to ask for your consideration to be annexed into the city so that we can continue that growth.
Thank you. We'll need to approve or disapprove ordinance G1348.
I'd move to approve.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to approve ordinance G1348. All approved by saying aye.
Aye.
Moving on to item B,
Thank you.
ordinance.
Welcome to Pittsburgh.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Moving on to ordinance number S1095. Consider approval of ordinance number S1095 terminating a redevelopment district and related redevelopment project plan within the city. North Broadway TIF district. Approve or disapprove?
Mayor, City Commissioners, I know we have a busy night, but I don't think this is something that we want to just pass on quickly. In 1993, I think, or 2003 and 2004, I believe coincidentally, we both have the mayor that was here in 2003, Marty Beasley, and the mayor that was here in 2004, Ralph McGeorge, were integral part of the commission approving the TIF for what is known as the Home Depot area. There's several businesses, at least 7 of them up there, that participated. We're fortunate to have collected enough revenue over the years to pay off the debt a year early. It was a 20-year bond that we took out. We paid it off a year early. It's good news for the city. It's great news, as Blake always says, there's a pull factor about how much money is spent in your community. And we were always losing money out of the community before that development. And that was really the first development, I think, that turned the tables and actually allowed us to start gaining shoppers from outside of Pittsburgh into Pittsburgh. So fantastic project. well before my time here, but luckily I was here to see it through and acknowledge the people that put in the effort to see that vision and clean up a very nasty site. It included eminent domain, which is an interesting term, but when you hear around redevelopment, sometimes that's the only option. And I think it's an anchor for all of our retail in town right now, and we're very proud that we can pay it off a year early as well.
So are there sales tax implications?
There's always tax implications, absolutely. We paid about $230,000 a year out of sales tax to pay the debt service on those bonds, so that will be retired. This action will notify the county that property will now go back on the tax rolls as well as property tax. So, yeah, that's a very minor impact, but $230,000 of sales taxes is something that'll definitely help us keep things moving.
Thank you.
Okay.
Move to approve.
Second?
Then moved and seconded to approve ordinance number S-1095. All in approval, say aye.
Aye.
All approved by the same sign. So be it. Special presentation now by the Kansas Department of Transportation.
Darren and counselors, good afternoon. Thank you for letting us come before you today. My name is Wayne Goodmanson. I'm the district engineer for Southeast Kansas. And with me, I have Scott King, the director of the Division of Engineering and Design. And bless Vanessa's heart, I misspelled or pronounced her name, but I have Vanessa Lamoureux. She is a senior director with the KDOT. Senior division and senior director, and then we also have Howard Lubliner. Howard is with the consulting firm Burns and McDonald, and we have brought the consulting firm on to help us deliver the Ike program, so that we're all here together. The reason we're here is we want to discuss the Pittsburgh bypass.
Did you use the microphone? Because I'm sure somebody.
Oh, I'm on the wrong side, okay, I'm sorry. We're here to discuss tonight the Pittsburgh bypass, Crawford County bypass, I'll just go bypass. And we're here to discuss it, but more importantly, we're here to listen to what you have to tell us. As I'm sure you're all aware of, it's been in the media, it's been all over, we did receive a federal earmark. And we have to figure out the best way to move forward with that federal earmark. It's probably been at least 10 years since we have been out and met with the communities that are involved with the bypass. And we have heard some comments come into us, and we decided that it was very important that we go out now and we start meeting with communities along the bypass again and bring up the dialogue and the discussion. And again, I just want to emphasize, we're here tonight to listen. And with that said, I'm going to turn it over to Scott King, the Division Director of Engineering and Design, and he's going to work through a PowerPoint to tell you to the point we're at this point in time. And after we're done, we'll gladly answer any questions that you may have for us. Again, thank you for letting us come before you.
Thanks, Wayne.
All right, thank you. Like Wayne said, we're gonna walk through a timeline, for the KDOT study. It's not gonna be very detailed like you probably heard years ago, but this is kind of our first start out of the gate to engage with the local officials and the public. Okay. In 1998, KDOT began a preliminary engineering study and community outreach to find alignment to meet the long-term goals of providing a freeway from Kansas City to Oklahoma. The need for the improvements to the corridor were due to increasing traffic and the number of entrances along the corridor directly on the highway. In 1999, 4 alternatives were developed and presented to the public. The east, the west, expanding the current, or doing nothing. The public preference was for expanding the existing alignment, also called the middle alternative. This map shows the options that were developed for consideration. the orange line is the middle alignment that was being supported in 1999, along with the other alignments that were considered. In 2000, preliminary design efforts began for the middle alternative, but work was suspended due to funding. During the project suspension, local support for the middle alternative began to erode because of concern about impacts to existing businesses and the number of relocations that would be required. A preference for the west alternative emerged and was presented for public comment. KDOT made some modifications to the west alternative based on public comments and became the new recommendation. In 2001, the cities of Pittsburgh, Arma, Frontenac, and Girard, and Crawford County signed resolution changing support to the west alternative. In 2005, congressional funding authority was given to move the project forward by identifying a preferred alignment, preparing an environmental assessment, and performing engineering design work. Support continued for the west alternative as KDOT held public meetings and met with public officials. KDOT again made some of the modifications to the west alternative in response to the public comments. From 2008 to 2011, KDOT continued its outreach efforts, meeting with public officials to provide updates on the project as the environmental assessment was being completed. In 2012, the environmental assessment was finalized and the west alternative presented as the preferred alignment. KDOT began design work on the preferred alternative with funding from federal earmarks. The blue line on the map shows the west alignment as originally proposed, and the green represents the west alignment with modifications based on input during the development of the environmental assessment. The green line is what is identified as the preferred alignment. Note the extension of US 160 to the west was part of both the original and the modified west alignment. So where are we now? The current estimated cost estimate to build the bypass, the entire bypass, is around $400 million. In the latest local consult meetings in 2019 and 2021, attendees voiced continued support for the bypass. After 2021 local consult meetings, KDOT looked at 4 phases of the bypass to determine the next steps. Phase 3 was then added to the pipeline, development pipeline, as the next step towards building the Pittsburgh bypass. I'll share a little bit more about that in the next slide. And then in 2023, the last project to complete the 4-lane from Pittsburgh to Kansas City is near completion. Okay, where are we now? Earlier this year, KDOT received $13 million in federal earmarks for that Phase 3. As originally designed, Phase 3 would extend US 160 to the west along what is now 590th Avenue for 2 miles, expanding the current 2-lane road to a 4-lane highway. Phase 3 is estimated to cost about $15 million. Before we move forward, we wanted to hear from you. We want to understand the community's thoughts on the overall bypass, the Phase 3 portion of the project, and certainly want to hear about concerns or your goals for the community. So I'll open it up here. Here's some contacts, just to put that up there for a minute, and then I'll kind of go back to the alignment slide so you can look at that again. I'll come back to this, but this is an email if public or anybody has a need to reach out to us. That engagement at ksdotike.org is where you can reach out to us and get your input. I'll back up here to this and then I'll open it up.
I have a question, and thanks for coming to our city and letting people ask some questions. I know you went to Frontenac and the county, and now us, So you have plans to go to Arma and Cherokee.
Yes.
After you complete all those meetings, what will the next step be in the process?
All right. Vanessa will help.
All right.
So as part of the program delivery for the Ike Transportation Plan, 2023 is a local consult year, which means that we will be hosting meetings in each of the designated KDOT districts. And so that means one will be taking place here in your district, which includes Pittsburgh. It'll be taking place in Iola. And that meeting is open to the public, where folks can engage in conversation about what projects move forward, what the community sentiments are around different project options. So that will be taking place in October. That's local consult. So that is one opportunity for feedback. We do intend to close the loop with communities around our conversation that we're having right now. So that way, when we go to local consult, there will be opportunity for more robust conversation.
Thank you.
So it looked like in 2021, you probably had about 300 participants in that process.
Somebody does back there. But
Can you guys just hold on a second?
we're getting a lot of,
Does somebody have a
going on back
radio
there.
on or,
oh, they're watching it on YouTube.
oh, that's us? Well,
Okay.
let's whisper and then we won't hear us.
Okay.
Thank you.
Would anyone else like to ask a question?
I
Dawn
don't think
does.
we're done. I don't think we're done.
We're not done?
Don,
I do have a question.
Did that help
Oh,
answer
okay.
your question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, yeah,
So
we're
you-
certainly gonna wrap up this feedback through this process, and we'll talk internally about some next steps, and certainly get back with the local officials.
So just to be clear, the input that you're getting from coming to the governmental agencies will possibly modify what then you will present in October? I mean, or is that an extended part of this process?
I think we would prefer to look at it as an extended part of this
Okay.
process,
Okay.
because a lot of it's going to depend on the feedback that we gather from you guys and the other communities that we're engaging with. That helps shape and inform what our potential next steps are as an agency, so that we're making sure that we're serving community and citizen needs, as well as larger transportation goals and the KDOT as an agency. So I would look at it as a continuation of the conversation from that perspective.
And is there a timeline on when the federal funds have to be spent?
Yes, we do have a timeline on that. So as written, the earmark has to be spent on constructing the Pittsburgh bypass, and it has to be spent by 2025. Now, there may be opportunity to modify the earmark to spend it in other ways on US 69, but that's going to take collaboration both with Senator Moran's office as well as the Federal Highway Administration.
And do they consider spending it on the Crawford County corridor engineering costs, not just construction? Or is it earmarked, double earmarked for construction?
That would be part of the conversations that we are currently engaging in,
Okay.
and attempting to understand.
Okay.
I have a question.
Sure.
Can you tell me the environmental assessment to date? How much money has been spent just environmentally? And what kind of testing did you do, and what year was that?
Well, the environmental assessment is basically, evaluating the corridor for different features such as, wildlife, mines, ponds, people. It's a complete evaluation of different alignments and what are the impacts to the environment, basically. So the environmental assessment I commented earlier was completed, and we do have that we can share. So it's kind of, there's a lot of information in it, so it's
Sure.
hard to describe each piece of it, but
But it
it's
was quite
basically a study.
extensive, from what I understand.
And there was a lot of engineering work put into that. I don't know the cost of that right offhand, but those are pricey. It could have been $1 million or more, I would say.
And that environmental assessment was for the west the preferred,
Yes, it
Preferred route, okay.
basically looked at those alignments, talked about, you know, the impacts of different features and, you know, the pros and cons basically of each of the alignments.
okay,
And then as the outcome of that, you know, we had to have a preferred alignment. And so that's the one that was discussed the most, as we've had studies in the past to understand the, so as far as the impacts to, you know, the different alignments from, you know, doing a freeway, I mentioned that, you know, the goals of the project was to provide a freeway from Kansas to Oklahoma. And so that's the primary goal to do that. But with a freeway, you have limited access and interchanges. So that is very impactful in different alignment situations. So if you're along the existing, you will impact businesses and control the access. You've probably seen where we put access roads in to serve different pieces of land or businesses and limit the number of entrances along the roadway. So expressway, that's what you see up to the north. There's still limited access to an expressway, but this one was a freeway.
could you define the difference?
The difference basically is on a freeway, it's like Interstate 70. You have really no entrances other than at interchange locations. Okay? And so that's pretty much the definition of the freeway, high speed. An expressway has limited access points, could be 1 to 2 mile spacing, and maybe half mile in certain cases, but it controls the access too. And so doing that, you can get higher speeds and you kind of limit your entrance locations or conflict points, so you enhance safety.
Sure. I'm done.
I have one question, another question.
Yes.
On this page 3, it says, after 2021, that was, let me find it. Yeah. That's when that west route was decided on.
Which,
But then, after 2021, local consultant KDOT looked at the 4 phases of the bypass, determined next step. Phase 3 was then added to the IKE development plan. That was in the original plan. What does this mean? It was then added?
well, the development pipeline is basically where we put projects to start design work, so the engineering services. So after the local consult process is completed, KDOT looks at the feedback from the communities and where the support is. And so the 03 portion was part of the phasing plan, what I show here. And that was a piece of the overall bypass. So we have developed plans on 02, 03, and I believe 04, I think is what I said in my presentation. So we actually have plans and showing right-of-way limits, construction. So we've done some design work on these, about, I'll say 50% complete. But the 03 is that extension of 160 over to the bypass, which can be used for different purposes as we develop the bypass. So I don't know if that
Can you
makes
tell
sense.
me why the preferred, why the west alignment is preferred by KDOT?
Well, it was a community and KDOT decision to go forward with the west alignment. As I noted in my presentation, there was a resolution from the communities to support or have KDOT say, hey, this is where we're supporting the bypass location. And so with those resolutions, KDOT moved to the western alignment. from that middle alternative that was originally preferred. So there was a change in, you know, the community's,
What community?
It's all of us.
Pittsburgh, Crawford
Okay,
County,
the whole spiel.
Columbus, I mean, all the region here, we'll say, is Gerard.
So Pittsburgh, Armor, Frontenac, Girard, and Crawford County signed a resolution.
Yes, thank you.
And during that time, there was people that had input, just like now?
We do extensive outreach, you know, as part of the environmental assessment. We did public meetings, local official meetings. All those have been probably ongoing since the nineties.
Sure. So '01 and 2011 were the main ones,
And then 19 and 21.
19?
Yeah, 19 and 21, since we've kind of developed things, everybody knew where we're at. The local support at those local consult meetings continued.
They must have been quiet, because I never saw them posted. And when I called,
You'll have a chance.
Yeah.
Hold on.
So
So,
I know there are some concerns about it wasn't well posted, but we do try and send out official notices, and we have it on our Ike website to try and get communities engaged. So it's open, it's not exclusive to anybody.
Well, the last one in 2021, you had over 400 people, so.
Yeah, so they're
Where would,
well
I
attended.
mean, just curious, where was that at?
I think it was
2021 would have been held in Pittsburgh.
Yeah. I think it was
yeah,
at,
Pitt State, I think,
Yeah.
is what I recall.
And the consensus at that time was the west alignment.
Yep,
Okay.
yes.
Anyone else?
No.
Any other questions here? Okay.
So I know this isn't detailed, but it gives you kind of the timeline and a little history, so, you know, this is just our starting point.
Thank you.
To have this discussion.
I would just like to say thank you to KDOT for any and all money that, and focus on Southeast Kansas to try to improve our roads. It's very much appreciated. Obviously, there's a lot of debate going on about this bypass now, and, but I hope that doesn't get lost with the fact that I think everybody here, lifelong citizens and new citizens alike, I think we all appreciate the fact that, you know, 69 Highway is a much better road than it was 20 years ago, 10 years ago. So, and we appreciate those efforts and hope that those will continue. So, thank you.
Thank you.
So I might just ask a question of the governing body. As we've been doing these meetings, we're trying to strike a balance between responding to your questions and responding to the public. But we're also trying to strike a balance in terms of being respectful of everyone's time, commitments, and other agenda items that you might need to cover. So if you could provide us some guidance on how you want us, because I don't want any member of the public that's here tonight to feel like we're not hearing what they're saying. But if it is not appropriate to do time-wise, they ask a question, we respond if we have an answer or provide information at this time. I want every single person here to rest assured that we are collecting the information, we are taking it back, and we will be responding in whatever way is feasible in case we miss names or things like that. Also, please write down the website or the email address, engagement@ksdot.ike, that's IKE.org. Send your questions there if you don't have the opportunity to get them asked tonight, and we will respond. So I just asked the governing body what your pleasure is for how we proceed.
well, my preference would be, just like you said, if anybody has a question they want asked to you, I hope, well, that would be the preference. Let everybody ask their question that's here tonight.
Well, that's obvious, but first of all, I'd like to thank all the folks that came tonight, because your interest shows that you care about the city of Pittsburgh, and you care about Crawford County and the areas around it, and I certainly thank you for that. But I think the forum will be that if you come forward and ask a question or make a comment, please do so concisely, and don't go into an elaborate explanation. that's really, oh, we're gonna be here till midnight, which is fine with me. You know, but a lot of people are gonna be standing all that time, so we're gonna open it up now. You guys are done
Yes. And have-
for the public.
So real quick, just to clarify, so we're all on the same page. What we don't really have the opportunity to do, and I think what you were alluding to, is a discussion. So what we've usually done under public input is, and for once, I don't have to be the note taker because I know KDOT's here. People are gonna come up, they're gonna speak for 3 to 5 minutes like they always do. We're gonna write down as much as we can. If there's a brief opportunity, I just want to keep the council in check that once we start asking questions back and forth, then we're just off the rails. So, if that can happen, it can happen. But to your point, we'll try to make sure that you're gonna follow up with everybody's concerns, after this. That's your promise to us, and we'll try to help you with whatever note. It's being filmed, so we can obviously go back.
Is there anyone here who's representing a group? A citizens group, or a city group, or a county group, or anything? Okay. Ken?
69 Association.
Okay. Do you have a question or comment?
I have a presentation.
You have a presentation?
Yeah.
Okay. Go ahead.
5 minutes.
What?
5 minutes.
5 minutes. You got it. Let's go.
You ready?
Yes.
Mr. Mayor,
And,
Dr. Mayor,
state your name and address.
however I should say that. Members of the commission and members of KDOT, thank you for this opportunity to speak to you about our continuing efforts to complete Highway 69 corridor from Kansas City to I-44. As most of you know, the Highway 69 Association has met many, many times during the last several years. In fact, this city commission, as well as Frontenac City Council, Arma City Council, Girard City Council, Cherokee, and Crawford County Commission met in their formal stations and adopted resolutions in support of the Western Corridor and of this very good highway that will serve the entire Crawford County area, as well as all of southeast Kansas. Each of our meetings over the past numerous years were well publicized, and once a year, we conducted annual meetings where we served dinner for all who attended and invited anyone along the corridor who was interested. We elected officers of the association, gave updates as we knew them, and invited public comments. These annual meetings were well-attended and productive, with members of KDOT helping us provide updates. The officers of the association also traveled to Washington, D.C. numerous times to solicit support and funding from our representatives. In fact, altogether, those visits not only resulted in consistent support, but also in about $8 million in federal dollars, which was put to use specifically in the Bourbon County area. This weekend, I drove the entire length of the progress that's been made. Thank you, KDOT. It's wonderful. The new road is terrific and much safer than the old 69 two-lane with all its hills and narrow lanes. I hope some of you as old as me can remember that. 70 miles is now complete with just 40 miles remaining, which is what we now advocate for. As we all know, progress comes at a price. No matter which route is followed, someone will be inconvenienced. But we have discussed the pros and cons at great length, and KDOT has been very accommodating whenever someone feels they have been unfairly impacted. The association has also traveled to Topeka on many occasions to meet with 3 different governors, as well as 3 different secretaries of transportation. These meetings were cordial and productive, resulting in the work that is now complete. KDOT engineers have informed us that the western alignment costs less and is less invasive to homes and businesses than any other plan. So the association has adopted the western alignment as its preference. Before construction began south of Fort Scott, According to KDOT statistics, the two-lane stretch of Highway 69 from Fort Scott to I-44 was seeing over 1,200 crashes, resulting over 300 injuries and 11 fatalities. Many of you know who those folks were personally, as do I. This new road will significantly reduce these injuries and fatalities, and that would be an adequate result for our effort. But we also get interested businesses coming to Southeast Kansas because we will now live on a 4-lane freeway. And PSU will get more students. In all of these years, we have enjoyed 100% community support. We've been doing this about 15 years, our group has. Only during the last few weeks have we heard pushback from a few folks. As always, the association, with the help of KDOT, will do everything possible to accommodate concerns of Southeast Kansas people. When friends and neighbors have called to ask where the highway will be, I have showed them the western alignment because that has been a definite, specific plan, and they have invested accordingly. Also, when there was a perception of conflict, KDOT has helped us modify as needed. For many years, the association has debated and studied the least invasive route, and KDOT has always been a partner in those discussions. If we back up now at this late date, we could back up on any plan. The western alignment is a definite plan and needs to be built as soon as possible. At this 11th hour, after all the trips and all the debate, please don't ask us or KDOT to start over. If this current plan can be changed, then any future plan can also be changed when it doesn't fit someone's agenda. May I answer questions?
I think we're
Thank
good.
you.
Okay.
Thanks, Ken.
Eddie? Yes, sir.
Hi, my name's Dan Muter. I live outside Pittsburgh. I don't have a vested interest in this.
Excuse me,
By-
Dan, could you just state your address for the record, please?
369 South 200th.
Thank you.
As in, the western bypass would take my land or my house or anything like that. I am just concerned for our region. I brought here by way of beginning, and Dr. Siegley, I'll honor your request. Question-wise, I'll do the Jeopardy thing and ask a question. In 2 days, we gathered 650 plus in-person petition signatures. That's not online, that's in person. Those aren't just people that are affected by it, that it runs through their land or consumes their house or anything like that. Those are people that think it's better for Pittsburgh and Frontenac and our county not to do the western bypass, but to do the one straight through the city as was originally planned in 1999. Now, let me ask a question, and I've heard two answers. Why do you want this? And I've heard two answers to that. The most common is because we decided to do that 20 years ago. That's the most common. Now, how many of you were commissioners 20 years ago? That's what I thought. This needs to be revisited, redone in light of a lot of different and new things. And you guys need to do that. In terms of going to those meetings, I went to Frontenac. There were 81 people there. There was not a commissioner, a city council person in favor of this. There wasn't one person that spoke in favor of the western bypass. I went to the county one. There was one person who spoke in favor of it, and the 8 or 10 who spoke were against it. And the council people, just like you commissioners, did a good job of guising where they were at on this. But I've talked to very few people that think the western thing is best. Now, according to KDOT's own website, and as I understand it, this is from 2012, 11 years ago, if I read that right. they need to acquire 209 properties and 47 structures to build the western bypass. That's 256 properties. Can you imagine the property tax devastation to the county to lose that and more likely 300 to 350 properties 11 years later? I can't even imagine that decline. Now, others are gonna speak about the middle route and why that's better. I respect Ken Brock like crazy and everything he's done. I respect KDOT. I love the road that they've built down to Pittsburgh. But we don't want it to stop there. We don't want it to get to Frontenac and Pittsburgh and stop and then go around it. We don't want that. We want people to see and experience the cities that we care about so much, to eat there like we do, to sleep there like we don't, to enjoy the recreation in the museums and the convenience stores and all that kind of thing. And if we go around the city, they're not gonna get to see that. That's important to us. It's important to this city. It's bad business, it's bad for our city to say the best thing is to go completely around it. Think about that. Bypass, that means to pass by. Do we want people to go by Pittsburgh farther away and faster around Pittsburgh? No. Our goal is for them to come into Pittsburgh and enjoy our services and build up our community. And we're gonna lose that if we vote for that western bypass. People have talked about, they did the other day, about FedEx and the casino and so forth and how that ties into the western bypass. The middle corridor goes closer to those two things than the western bypass. I don't get that. I don't understand that argument. Our goal ought to be to build a better, faster, safer bypass to and alongside Frontenac and Pittsburgh. That ought to be our goal, not to avoid it, not to go around it. You know as well as I do, if you're traveling along and you see a sign and it has a Casey's on it and a Dairy Queen and a McDonald's or whatever, and you can see the signs that you're gonna get off there. But if it says an arrow and it says 2.5 miles that way, you're not going to. You're just gonna keep going. They talked about in this presentation, KDOT said that the middle route was the original choice in 1999 and 2000. That was changed because of impacts, concerns about impacts to existing businesses and relocations. There will be people come up here that own, that run, that work at businesses along that route right now. And they don't want this to go west because they know that they're gonna lose business. They want it to be part of them so people can see and utilize their businesses. Now, bottom line, and I'll end with this, is that the western bypass makes Frontenac and Pittsburgh and the area we care about and work in and spend our money in and play in and watch our kids play ball in and all that, it makes it less appealing. If we go the middle version through town at a much lower cost, you'll hear that, then it makes our area more appealing. And people are more likely to stop and enjoy that.
Good evening. My name is Linda Grills, and I actually live in Frontenac. And I wanted to let you all know, in 1998, I was on the city council. In fact, I served 12 years on the city council in Frontenac, and I also served 4 years as a Crawford County Commissioner. During that time, I was exposed to how important a expanded Highway 69 is for our business and industry. you know, I listened to the remarks being made, and I realized that a new highway is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for us, and we need to do a very good job about this. But 20-plus years ago, all the cities and the county made a decision. We've hashed all this out. I've sat at council meetings and been threatened by business owners that they were going to move if we decided to do anything. The same business owners that would benefit from a modern, expansive highway. I drive back and forth to Texas where I have family. I've done this for 40 years, 5 or 6 trips a year. I have never gone and pulled over to buy a new car. I've never gone to a museum. I've noted that there are museums and there's a place that I might be interested to go. But that's not my intent. I'm on that road to go from point A to point B. If I want to come into your city, tell me what you have. Put it on a billboard, and if it's interesting to me, I will go. The people of Crawford County have waited far too long for a highway that will give us a competitive edge to grow this area. And I'm not talking about a place to eat or to buy gas or to visit a museum. I'm talking about an industry that builds things and produces them to be distributed throughout America. It can be done in Crawford County. I support the work of KDOT. I do hope that all the information is taken back and considered by KDOT representatives so that you know not all of us don't want a highway. We want a highway, and we feel it's vital for us. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
I'm Bert Patrick. I'm a Pittsburgh resident, and I welcome the opportunity to speak to the City Commission and to the KDOT officials who are here this evening. I would like to also speak in support of the existing highway arrangement between Highway 160 and Atkinson, and then an expansion of the existing bypass to a 4-lane bypass. And my rationale is based on 2 living laboratories that we have that have had bypasses built through and around them. And I'm referring to the cities of Fort Scott and Pleasanton. And I would give you this information about Fort Scott as a model for us for the following reasons. The highway that was built to the Shepherd Auto Plaza did not have a negative impact on the existing businesses at that time. And then, to avoid the destruction of the center part of that city and the fort, a bypass was built around the city. I think that is a good model for Pittsburgh. If you turn that north-south axis around and come from north to south. So let's assume that the south edge of Fort Scott is the north edge of Pittsburgh. We have businesses along that corridor, just as they have, and they were not negatively impacted. In fact, it's been my observation as I've driven to Kansas City that that business corridor has expanded, and it's helped the city. I think we could do the same thing here. It's my observation that there is plenty of land to the west of the existing bypass for that to be expanded into a 4-lane highway. I think that's less destructive, and I think it is better for the greater bulk of people who are going to be affected by the options available. I'd like for you to consider Pleasanton. Many of us have driven through Pleasanton decades ago. And I drove through Pleasanton a week ago this past Friday. I stopped there at the Casey's. I said, I'm in no rush to get back home. I'm gonna drive through town. I haven't seen it in decades. I did. I did see a ghost town in slow motion. The core of that city has not changed. In fact, it's deteriorated significantly. I only saw 2 businesses that are truly thriving in Pleasanton. The Dollar General store and Casey's outside the city near the bypass. I don't know how much revenue that is generating for the city. Either of those businesses are generating for the city of Pleasanton, but they are probably only producing low-paying jobs for the local employees who work there. I would imagine that most of the revenue that those 2 businesses produce go back to corporate headquarters for the creation of more Dollar General stores and Casey's. I think that is a living laboratory, an example of what happens to a city when a bypass goes completely around it. And I think it's a cautionary tale for Pittsburgh and Frontenac. I would beg you to consider that. I would ask the members of KDOT to interview the officials of Pleasanton and Pleasanton residents about their perception of the benefit of the bypass for their city. So, I think that when you put those 2 options on the scales, if we think about the negative impact of the western corridor, I heard a lot of Capaldo residents speak at the Frontenac City Commission, and I heard them deeply concerned about the destruction of their homes. I heard farmers talk about the destruction of their farmland. And then I also heard persons concerned about the economic impact on both Frontenac and Pittsburgh. So if it's going to cost those persons who drive from I-44 and the Oklahoma border an additional 5 to 7, maybe 8 minutes time to go through the existing corridor with a 4-lane bypass around the city, I think that's a very good trade-off to the Pleasanton model, which I think has had a very negative impact on that city. And I think it is an example for us about what could happen and most likely would happen here with a bypass that goes completely around the city. I thank you for this opportunity, and I would invite you members also to speak to residents and officials in both Fort Scott and Pleasanton to get their input, because I think it's valuable. Thank you.
Hi, Bailey Cares. I'm a resident of Frontenac. It was mentioned in earlier speeches that this was public meetings and this has been announced publicly. Anyone in this room have heard of these meetings being discussed? Bypasses prior to this? Yes. Okay, me either. I just built a brand new house right off of 590th in 2021. I got wind of this about 6 months ago. I called Wayne and I have a voicemail from him. He stated, quote, "I know nothing about this bypass expansion, and when I do, I'll let you know." And I haven't heard back from him until he presented at the City of Frontenac meeting last week. So, I think based on the turnout of the county meeting and the previous meetings, there has been a lot of people that are concerned about this and will be impacted. 20 years ago, the West Initiative may have been the best option, but a lot has changed in 20 years. My house did not exist 20 years ago, and if I would have been aware of any public meeting that was held prior to this, I can promise you I would not have built a pretty nice house where a 4-lane highway will be in my backyard. That's it.
I'm Debbie Brock, 3500 Grand Oaks Park, and my husband Ken spoke, but you know, not all married couples totally agree on everything. But you're here to listen, and I do have a few questions. I totally understand Bailey's point of view. We don't have any property on it in any of the three routes, so it's not personal in that way, but I do understand her sentiment and other people's sentiment on that. So the questions I have, and I asked this the other day at the Crawford County, and I know you're working on it, is which route costs the most? What are the costs of the three routes? That's important to taxpayers. What's the most disruptive? How many businesses and homes are disturbed during this? They're working on that. And the third question I have, I made this joke the other day, it didn't go over too well, but it's not their first rodeo. So it's a history of the financial impact of bypasses. You know, we can speculate. I buy as many Cokes at Casey's as I ever did in Pleasanton. But what's the true significance in a community of a bypass? So though understanding those three things and weighing those three things, I believe would be really important to all of the citizens in Crawford County. So thank you for your
Thank you. Whoa, wait, the ladies.
I'm sorry. Sorry. My name's Marty Beasley. I live at 607 Sycamore Lane in Pittsburgh, Kansas. And somebody asked the question, several questions have been asked regarding this bypass. And I'm not going to call it a bypass. I'm going to call it Crawford County Corridor. And I got in touch with the Pittsburgh City clerk yesterday, Tammy, and thank you, Tammy, sent me I had some questions also. So I'd like to say very quickly what was said in Resolution 911 regarding why the west was chosen. And the first one is the existing corridor handles a great deal of local traffic and the west alternative leaves the existing corridor in place. I think this is a very important one to think about. Construction of a new freeway on the middle alternative would substantially disrupt such traffic for years, especially if the new freeway is to be constructed in segments. C, the west alternative requires the relocation of no businesses and of 76 fewer residents than the middle alternative. This may not be true at this point in time. I'm not sure about that because it's 20-some years later. The west alternative will significantly encourage further industrial development in and around the Arma Industrial Park west of the city of Arma, in and around the Frontenac Industrial Park west of the city of Frontenac, and in and around the Pittsburgh Airport Industrial Park west of the city of Pittsburgh, as well as promote growth in the cities of Girard, Cherokee, and other unincorporated areas in the county. And finally, the middle alternative will impact local woodlands and parts of three parks, Lincoln Park, Robb Park, and Wilderness Park. Do all of these still apply, do you think? All of these facts? They do. And we haven't heard how many houses are going to be impacted on the, if you come down the center. And I will say that I live almost on the bypass, maybe a block. And you're right, things have changed in the last 20-some years. I can't sit on my patio and hear my husband talking to me because the traffic is so bad there. The jake braking goes on night and day, and I don't know what we can do about that. It's trucks, they've got to get product here and there. But I can tell you that that road on one, and the city manager knows this because I talked to him that week, 5 accidents on the corner of Quincy and the bypass. Now that may not be there anymore if they come down the center And the jake breaking may not be there anymore if they come down the center. But there are houses down there, and I want to know, are you gonna do noise abatement? Because if I've got, and somebody said a minute ago, I think the young woman who had just built a home said, you know, she doesn't want to sit on a major highway. I'm really going to be sitting on a major interstate. And also, I accompanied Ken Brock several times to Washington, D.C. to chase money for a highway that would bring southeast Kansas into today's world. And I also went to the state several times with him. And, you know, I remember one time I was talking to Commissioner Brooks today. I called I was in charge of the Chamber of Commerce at that time, and I called Wichita to talk to their mayor. He couldn't speak to me, but his assistant said, you people down there have a good day. Well, I said, you know, we're not you people down there. We're from southeast Kansas, and you should get to know us. So I'm very happy with the new road that comes from Kansas City down. But I certainly hope we don't stop at that, and we quarrel among ourselves so much that KDOT looks and says, they are those people down there. They're fighting over this. We should all be, whatever happens, I'm going to be inconvenienced if it comes down the middle section. My house could probably not be what it's supposed to, it could have sold for sooner or later. But, you know, we got to do something here. We have economic development. I tell you, when I sat on the commission, I can't tell you how many times businesses came to look at our city, and they could not get their product out of the city. Now AZZ still has to have a police escort to get their product out of the city because we don't have the roads that we need. We need economic development down here, and not down here, in Pittsburg, Kansas, in Crawford County. We have changed what we are. We used to be a mining city. Crawford County was also, you know, a mining district. That's what we were. What do we want to be? And I think to move ahead, we've got to come to some kind of consensus, and we will. But I feel badly for all those people that are going to be affected. I feel badly for myself. But we cannot let those KDOT dollars go because they won't come back. And if we apply again, they'll say, I don't know, we had a hard time down there in southeast Kansas. Maybe we ought to look at someplace else. We have fought for years for those dollars, not only federally, but statewide. So whatever happens, I wish the best. I wish the best for everyone here. And, you know, I guess if it goes through my living room, I may put up a McDonald's sign. I don't know. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Sarah Dodson, and I live just west of the airport at 566 East 570th Avenue. And I'll try and keep my comments to only those that I haven't already heard expressed, but just in short, my family, my husband and I moved here from Kansas City in 2011. We've been very excited about the growth that's occurred. I'm very, of course, supportive of, you know, safer roads and seeing the area continue to grow. Since we've moved here, we've had 4 kids, and I want opportunities for my kids as well. But a couple of observations that I have is, again, I moved here in 2011, so that was after the majority of this had been discussed. Last week was the first time I'd heard about anything of this on social media. And just an observation from where I live, standing in my driveway, I can see 10 homes, 2 businesses, and a church. 7 of those homes, to the best of my knowledge, were built after 2003. So I realize, you know, there's not a solution that's going to make everybody happy, I should say. But my concern is just probably, you know, as a result of all the growth that's occurred in the community, we've had growth in the western area as well. And so, again, my concern and my ask would be really just to fully reassess the impact today, you know, what the impact to homes will be, because as a homeowner, you know, just again, this last week, trying to figure out what the impact is going to be to my family. I think it goes over my home. It's honestly really difficult to say today from the maps, and I've reached out to KDOT. I know they've been busy this week. I've not heard back yet. But as a homeowner with 4 young kids, if I look at, okay, if I'm displaced, where do I go if I'm going to stay in this community? I mean, separate topic, you know, I know housing is an issue. If you're talking about 10 families or 20 families or 30 families, and I know this is a long process, but if I want to stay in the Pittsburg community, where am I going to live? So again, just my ask today is that we really reassess. I know it might take some time, hopefully not too long, but before any decisions are made, to go back and assess what the impact is today for the west route. Thank you.
Jerry?
My name is Jerry Lomschick, and I'm from Chicopee. And Mayor and council members, I appreciate you having this forum for all of us to express our views. And I want to also thank KDOT for their work on this project for many years, and also for the association for the work that they've done over all these years. I'll not repeat the concerns that I expressed at the County Commission meeting last Friday, but since then, I've further considered concerns involving the west alternative. Once again, I will state my hearty support for a 4-lane 69 highway extension to I-44. I couldn't agree more that that's really needed. But this debate is about how to achieve that goal. In 2001, the cities along this corridor supported the western route. In the intervening 22 years, much has changed, as you've heard, in the design of that route and also in the demographics of this area. The decision to support that route was made just 3 years after the preliminary assessment was made, and that decision was obviously made with currently inadequate information and is now certainly outdated and therefore negated. My question is how KDOT proposes to raise the needed $400 million for the western route, and how long that will take to bring that to completion. I have not heard that. Currently, they have $13 million, not even enough to complete phase 3. This $13 million represents 3.25% of the total that's needed for the western route. The estimated cost of updating the middle route is estimated, I have heard, between 70 and 100 million, which is only 17 to 25% of what the western route would cost us. The west route includes about 19, maybe 20 miles of new 4-lane construction, along with the needed land and property acquisition, instead of 7 or 8 miles of adding 1 lane without additional or very minimal land acquisition. The right-of-way, KDOT was looking forward at the time that the bypass was put in, and there is adequate right-of-way there for 4-lane highway right now. The cost of overpasses and interchanges appear to be about 7 on both of those routes, whether the middle or the western route, and so that's about equal. However, looking at the map here, the western route will, how will they accommodate the other 10 roads that will be crossed on the western route? Or will those just simply be blocked? The differences in cost is significant. If there is no adequate assurance for asset acquisition, especially given the current economic conditions of the country, will it take another 25 years to complete the western route? St. Luke says, if one of you decides to build a tower, will he not first sit down and calculate the outlay to see if he has enough money to complete the project? He will do that for fear of laying the foundation and then not being able to complete the work. For all who saw it would jeer at him, saying, that man began to build what he could not finish. What will become of the current bypasses at Arma and Pittsburgh? Will KDOT continue to maintain 3 alternate Highway 69 routes, or will they be dumped on the cities and counties to maintain? I'm frequently on the Pittsburgh streets, and it seems Pittsburgh currently struggles to maintain their streets here. West 4th is becoming a patchwork, and other examples of poorly maintained streets include North Locust, East 27th leading to Walmart, and the moonscape of potholes found on North Tyler and Easttown, to name only a few. The population in Pittsburgh in 1970 was 20,171. This is census records. In 2020, it was 20,646, an increase in 50 years of 475 people, or 2.4%. In between there, the population dropped and then it came back up in 2020. Yet the expansion of the city by annexation far exceeds that percentage. Although increasing the tax revenues, it has certainly increased the cost to the city in infrastructure and protection. Regarding increasing the speed of traversing the two routes, I did some rudimentary assessments. To cover the 19 miles of the west route at an unhampered speed of 65 miles per hour, that route will take you 17 minutes and 32 seconds to cover that area. If the speed is increased to 70 miles per hour, it can be covered in 16 minutes and 17 seconds. Considering the middle route to cover the same area with 15 miles of 65 miles per hour and 2 miles that we have at Frontenac now at 45 miles per hour, it will take you 16 minutes and 31 seconds. If you increase the speed of the 15 miles to 70 miles per hour, it will, and you still have the 2 miles at 45 miles per hour, the time to transverse that is 14 minutes and 4 seconds. It was stated at the county commissioners meeting that there was no plan to go south of 400 Highway with 4 lanes. What happened to the connecting south to I-44? At one time, the plan was to reconnect the west route to current 69 Highway 1 mile south of the five-corner intersection close to the Bird Cemetery. Over the past 20-plus years, there's been a lack of transparency and a dearth of information regarding this project for the general tax-paying public. Once again, I would appeal for some judicious, pragmatic, common-sense decision-making involved here rather than bureaucratic dictate. I appreciate the large amount of work KDOT has done on this project, but if they have come here to simply inform the sheeple of a decision already made, but I believe they have encountered a Kansas Balkans. I'll close with saying that the time of extravagance is fastly fading here. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. I'm Dave Loisel, 1494 Northeast 400 Highway. I was raised in Pittsburgh. I don't live here, but it's my hometown. And I want the best for it. And I want to make sure that everybody that's participating in public service, whether it's on the city commission or on KDOT or on an informal group, gets our thanks. These are not easy things to do. These are things people take upon themselves to do. And regardless of how we all feel about different things, I'm for all of you. Arteries are things that take nutrients to the body. When we're talking about highways, arteries are what bring the nutrients to our cities. I'm going to repeat what you've already heard. Who goes to Pleasanton anymore? Who goes to Fort Scott, downtown? Who goes downtown Parsons anymore? What business does Fredonia get from people traveling the highway anymore? When arteries are flush, they bring nutrients and they bring growth. When those arteries are bypassed, decay sets in. I have some factual information. I was the county appraiser in Labette County when the bypass went in around Parsons. The McDonald's moved from its location on the east side of town out to the new artery. They weren't dependent totally on highway business coming to them. They needed the town's business too. So they stayed within town, but they were on the route that had the exit off of the new bypass coming down into town. The building that they previously had out at the Walmart area, Walmart also moved out. That got sold while I was there for $40,000. I went by and looked at it yesterday. It's empty. The roof's tattered on it. The county valuation on that has it listed as a use of residential right now. They've got the land, 4,356 square feet, valued at $2,470. The building, 3,573 square feet, built in 1980, is valued at $10,890. The whole thing's valued at $13,000. Well, it was in better shape when it sold for $40,000, but I can guarantee you that was a $125, $150 square foot building when they built it. It's decayed. Bronze IGA was out there in the strip mall. That strip mall sits on 6.7 acres, has 51,000 square feet of area within it. It's got a, what would I call it? It's got a flea market there in part of it. Parts with a grocery store. It became an Always Save, but it didn't make it. It's also vacant. It's in decay. It's currently listed on the county records, the 6.27 acres, $33,610 land value. That works out to about $53.60 an acre, or 12.3 cents per square foot. The building is valued at $42.50. That's about 82 cents per square foot on that 51,000 square foot building, total of $75,860. That's a total land and building per square foot price out there of $1.49. That's in spite of a building permit indicating that in the year 2008, an additional $65,000 had been spent on the property. I'm talking about the artery has stopped and decay has set in. Another major franchise, Long John Silver's, was at 22nd and Main Street. It sold while I was there after the bypass went in. They finally found a buyer for it for $25,000. Today, there is a U.S. Cellular at that location. The county value on it, it's got 17,424 square feet, valued at $18,760, or $1.08 a square foot. The building is 1,828 square feet. It was built in 1997. It is now on the county's tax rolls for a value of $12,330 building value, or $6.74 per square foot for the 1,828 feet. Excuse me, that's the land, I'm telling you. The building itself, no, that is accurate, both of those numbers. I was looking at my total. The total value on the property is carried at $31,090. It's in good or better shape as when it sold for $25,000 back in the 2009-2010 period when I was there from 2008 to 2011 doing that job. $17.01 per square foot, both land and building value on that national franchise. There's another one there, just a block off of 16th Street, which is also Highway 59, down at the corner of 15th and Main, the Burger King. While I was there, I got to do an appeal on that thing. Some poor fellow had bought that. It was built with a building permit showed in 2000, $438,000, $127.17 per square foot on that building. He had bought it for about $700,000 and change. He had bought what he thought was a triple net lease that would pay on it. People that were in it weren't able to make the payments, and he got it back, and he's not been able to do a darn thing with it since then. He's out in Livermore, California. The current valuation, once again, it was built in 2000 for $438,000. That's the building permit, doesn't include the land. It sits on 36,155 square feet, valued at $29,810, 82.4 cents per square foot. It's a 3,444 square foot building. It's in pretty good shape. It's valued at $96,960 for that building, $28.15 square foot. The total valuation, $126,770, $36.80 a square foot. This is on a building built in 2000 at a permitted expense of about $127 a square foot. So when you cut out the arteries, you cut out the nutrients, things go into decay. I want to speak to this idea about we said this and this is what we want. And as far as I know, Darren Hall, I've not had a problem with anything I've ever seen you do. I think you're straight up #1 guy. Blake Benson, wherever you are, I'm going to say the same thing about Blake. But when I hear this term "we," and then I look at what I'll call us, there's a disconnect. And we see this in our national polling. We see 60, 70% public support for things that our so-called leaders won't get on board with. So I think there is evidence that nationally we see a big disconnect between what the people want and what their leadership is accomplishing. And so I'd put that out there. There's really two kinds of people that I see in positions that I would call of public service. And one group are the people that really look at the attitude that they are a servant. And then there's another group occupying those positions that feel like they are an elite. And I think too many times we get decisions from the elites, not from the servants. I'm just for whatever that's worth. We absolutely need a 4-lane. And if you look at those 3 routes, guess what? They're all 3 4 lanes. So whichever route you pick, we're going to get a 4-lane. Any of them that get accomplished. So that's what the group from the 69 Highway has argued for and wanted. I think you'd be proud to see it happen, truly. And another thing is, in full disclosure, I represent property interests that would benefit from taking the middle route. So I need to put that out there for full disclosure. When I found out about the FedEx building being built, I said, oh, the highway's going to come through. We're going to get it. So I ran down to our local KDOT office and I started talking to the people about this. What's the alignment going to be? I thought it was 69 that they were talking about. Well, they didn't know anything about 69. They didn't know anything about FedEx. They didn't, and this, you know, I was a little bit surprised to hear that there was a plan here, because I'd been asking for what's the plan from KDOT, and nobody could tell me anything. So it hasn't really been out there all that much. But when I talked to the people at KDOT there, and I started mentioning Pleasanton, and I started mentioning Fredonia, they actually kind of bristled and said, listen, our job is to move people efficiently and safely. That's our job. So what that makes me wonder is this truly something that can affect KDOT plans to have a public meeting, or is this just window dressing? It's my sincere hope that the number of petitions that have been garnered in this very brief period of time, and that I imagine is going to keep going up, will be something that KDOT definitely takes into account when the decisions are made. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's Barbara Loisel, the other half of what you just heard, 1494 Northeast 400 Highway. And what I heard was the green will get you a freeway. Is that correct?
Yes, that was the assumption for all the alternatives.
So my question is, if you put a clover leaf at the north end, you get rid of 20th Street with an overpass, you close the road to the park, you put a clover leaf at 4th Street, you put an overpass at Quincy, put another clover leaf at Centennial, don't you get the same thing? Is that not correct?
It's controlled access
It's-
from Atkinson to.
It's the same thing. You get straight through traffic with no stoplights. It's what you get. It's what you wanted. So why are you going so far from Pittsburgh to kill the town? I don't understand it. That's what I got to say.
Commissioners, thank you for the opportunity to speak this evening. My name's Cody Cowan. I'm a Crawford County resident, 1055 South 210th Street. I agree strongly that there is a need for an improved bypass. Unfortunately, I am not in support of spending $400 million for a 19-mile long western corridor in which we already own an existing 200-foot wide corridor down the existing 69 highway bypass from Arma to south of Pittsburgh. As far as the $400 million, Wayne, I know we talked about this last week. Does it include the cost of land acquisition, or is that just construction cost?
And acquisition too, doesn't it? Construction. Construction only?
Okay, so there's a much larger number in play here than just 400 million. If we're talking $400 million to build a 19-mile long western corridor at the proposed right-of-way width, it's going to displace about 700 acres in the county. That's going to cost some money to buy. That's a lot of farms being split in half. That's a lot of houses to be bought. Of course, we're all aware of the recent housing boom. A mile and a half west of Pittsburgh, those are all paved roads. You could drive that proposed western corridor and see all the new houses that's been built in the last few years. Like I said, if the western corridor, the 19-mile long corridor was built, it'll displace about 700 acres. So that's a loss of about 700 acres of farm ground in the county, people's homes. I'm sure the county's not going to be interested in losing all the real estate taxes on that. And also the displacement of 700 acres out in the county, there'll be a wildlife habitat impact as well. I did some reading from the 2012 environmental assessment. Another thing to consider is if we were to go with that 700 acre displacement, 188 of those acres are in the 100-year floodplain. That will be displaced by a raised highway. In my opinion, that'll put more pressure on the floodplain in our area between the existing bypass, which is somewhat elevated, and this proposed western corridor. So that water is going to have to go somewhere. And inconveniently enough, in that area is Cow Creek. So you've got a highway on each side that is elevated, plus Cow Creek running through the middle. Just something to consider as far as an environmental impact. That environmental assessment also made mention of displacing 23 acres of previously identified wetlands along that corridor, which would result in a significant loss of wildlife habitat. And the western corridor, and I've seen this on other projects in the past, they would have to allow for wildlife crossings along this new corridor as well. Like I said, I am in favor of reusing the existing corridor that we already own. There's been improvements made to the bypass around Arma and Franklin. That existing 2-lane bypass has been improved and expanded upon to a 4-lane within that existing right-of-way. Our existing corridor is the same width. I know we got a couple bottlenecks in there. But our existing bypass around Pittsburgh, starting north of Arma, you've already got 4 lanes north of Arma, 4 lanes around Arma and Franklin, and you got 4 lanes to Sarah Jean's, which is Atkinson. At the 20th Street intersection, you've already got a half mile of 4-lane. At 4th Street intersection, you already got a half mile of 4-lane. And then south of town, you already have a half mile of 4-lane. Of course, this is my opinion. As far as I'm concerned, there can be significant improvements made to the existing corridor. It's been previously mentioned, eliminating some stoplights. If you were to remove some of the access to the existing corridor, you'd have to put an overpass over the railroad tracks. Of course, you've got the option of roundabouts. And also, we've talked about the 15 million that is available. It's got to be spent or a project started by 2025. And the current, from what I've read from the slideshow, the current plan is to try to use that money that is available to us. But the portion of that project would be extending 160 Highway 2 miles west to a proposed western route that sounds like we haven't chosen a route yet. So we would basically be spending $15 million improving a 2-lane county road into a 4-lane divided highway for 2 miles that's basically just going to dead end to a proposed western corridor that might not even happen. I'd almost say, of course, this is just my opinion, hold off on something like that until we get a little further along. But it sounds like the $400 million estimate it's going to cost a little more than that. And I know it doesn't sound like we quite have the money to spend on something like that right now. And in my mind, I'm just trying to think fiscally responsible options, try to reuse the corridor that we have. Crawford County and Pittsburgh businesses are already established along that corridor. If we were to leave them on the wayside, they would just be displaced. They would be bypassed. So, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
My name's Jeff Briggs. I own 2 businesses in Arma, Kansas, which are just recently built businesses. Built them in Arma to help the community grow. Arma's a very small town. There's not a whole lot there to start with, but the very little businesses that are there now will be killed by this highway if it's moved. Along with Frontenac and Pittsburgh and Franklin and everywhere else. $400 million is an awfully lot of money to spend when the majority of us have already been dealing with the highway construction and everything that else that's already went on, to make it a 4-lane through Arma and Franklin. I don't want to take too much time. There's a lot of people here. I just really hope everybody kind of takes a minute and thinks about this, because it's going to shut a lot of small businesses down. Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you for your time. My name is Giovanna Brackett Odinger. I live at 517 East 595th Avenue, and I'm a farmer. I'm the silent minority that will be highly impacted by the Western route. There are no accesses for my tractors. There are no accesses for me to get my cattle, for me to get anything from one side of the western side to the other. I'm wondering if, in order to accommodate me, in 10 years from now, if they're going to do what they did in Interstate 71 over in Missouri, and then they're going to have to build these overpasses over where the farmers travel across now. So, if 2020 and 2021 taught us anything, it's that farmers and keeping food growing in our country is important. I think that it's very important right now to highlight the fact that farmers, of the 500 acres that you'll be taking, if you guys drive around now, you'll probably see some little corn starting up. That's your food growing. I grow it for all of us to eat. And you'll see baby calves in the pasture, and they're running and playing, and you'll be taking their pastures away. And so some of these things, land is not being remade someplace else. And all of this new highway that was built, all of that is, it can't be farm ground again. You're not going to tear all that up that you just built and turn it back into farm ground. You can't do that with all the rock and all the lime and everything. I mean, you're talking about your environmental concerns. I know one farmer that they're going to go directly through his farm, him and his son, probably going to cost, and as I understand, we just now learned that it's only construction costs. So here you go, probably going to cost about $100 million between the time you figure his 2 homes, all of the bins that he has built, all of the silage areas that he has built, all of his machine sheds, and you're going to displace all that. And he's going to have to find a place to rebuild. Keep in mind that all of the farmers have local money. Our money are in the banks in this county. I have a bachelor's and a master's degree. I moved away for a little bit, but I love this county. I love this town. I love this place. The people are wonderful. They're loving. They're caring. But I do what I do so that I can feed all of us. And there are farmers all over the county that feel this way. And so whatever route you're considering, I would ask that the minority, which I am, be considered. And just as a little aside, I know I heard several of you ask about the environmental concerns. Consider if we do the western route, if all of those new homes are going to be torn down, and that huge farm is going to be torn down, where's all that stuff going to go? Our landfill? Absolutely. So think about, I mean, there are some huge ramifications here when we could simply go over the land that we already own. So I just ask you to think about that.
Wayne, do you want a chair? I mean, you don't have to stand.
Yeah, I've been standing a while, yeah.
Sorry, Blake.
No, you're good. Good evening, Mr. Mayor. Blake Benson, also with the Highway 69 Association. I'll keep my comments brief. I gave input at the county commission meeting, and most of my points have already been given tonight. I hope our friends at KDOT understand that while there are differences on the route, the consensus is that what we currently have is not enough and not working. Our current bypass is pulling well over 10,000 cars, well over 1,000 trucks, heavy trucks every day. And unfortunately, it's a dangerous mix of semis, school buses, minivans, and teenage drivers like mine that probably didn't leave and give enough time in their rush for school. As a matter of fact, my son has been rear-ended at Olive and the bypass, And his mom and I are just fortunate that he was hit by another pickup and not a semi, or the result would have been much different. So this is, I think what has been said earlier, that KDOT is in the business of moving people quickly and safely. And one of the things this would do would be to get those trucks off of our local roads, which I think would help improve safety. I would also have a concern in moving the route, not only the delay that it would create, but also, as has been mentioned before, the potential impact to the homes and businesses that are along the current bypass. And if you just visually start with Heritage Tractor, which, you know, you heard from them earlier today, and moving up to Centennial in the bypass, and those interchanges would go where I'm guessing the La Quinta currently is, the city's wastewater treatment plant, and you can just visualize what that route would look like and how many people that would impact. And I want to make clear that I know I don't speak for all of them. I know there are a number of differing opinions. Had a great conversation with a local business owner today that's on that route that has a differing opinion. I value him, I value his opinion, but I think the impact would be significantly more if it were the middle alignment. Third, last point, from an economic development standpoint, I think we would get much more impact, I think as far as manufacturers and industries, because we have the good fortune to get a lot of those inquiries, and they want to know, are you located on a 4-lane highway? And I feel like if we just expanded the middle alignment, the east side is already full, so that would not be an option for manufacturing prospects, to where if it were a new, modern road, you would have both sides of the road to market to potential industries. But I know you want what's best for our area. I do. Everybody in this room wants what's best for the area, and so does KDOT. So thank you again for the opportunity.
Thanks, Blake.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen of the commission. My name is Ralph McGeorge, and I served on the city commission in the year 2000. I was the mayor. Larry Stevens, which was the city manager at that time, him and I went to every community. We went to Frontenac, we went to all the major cities, Crawford County, Girard, and we had that resolution signed by all of them. It was all unanimous. And as a matter of fact, if I can recall, it was the first time KDOT ever heard of anybody in Crawford County agreeing on the same thing. And we brought this down back then, that the Western Corridor would probably be the best thing at the time. Now, I was elected by the people to serve on the city commission, and I'm proud to say that I represented all the people that lived in Pittsburg, Kansas. And I always did what I did best for the community as a whole. And there's a lot of things that's been said tonight, I hear, that if the bypass goes down there, it'd be a road to nowhere. I have to disagree with that. I think it'd be a road to the future. And I think we all have to agree about that. So whichever way we go on this thing, we need to make a wise decision and see what's best. I know things has changed since 2000. And I just wanted to express my opinion on this, and I hope you guys can come up with a good solution on a tough problem. Thank you.
Thank you, Ralph.
Thanks, Ralph.
I would like to make a point. The point is, this commission is not going to make a decision on this. You know, this is the city commission. We don't get into the state business. So please understand that we don't have an impact here other than our opinions, and to listen to you all. Thank you.
But it is great to have the opportunity to give you a voice, even if you're not in the city of Pittsburgh. This is a nice facility. It thankfully holds 110 people, but the decision is KDOT's, but I want you, and we may need to take a break. Maybe show of hands, how many people are still have to talk? If it's only a handful, it looks like we can knock it out, but I don't want anybody floating away.
Just
on the
one
commission.
person?
I think I saw about less than 5, maybe.
Okay.
But thanks for coming, everybody. This has been great, and we're happy to host it. Come on up.
Hello, my name is Steve Garner. I live at 1603 West 20th Street, just outside the city limits. And from what I can ascertain from the map, is this will be about 2,600 feet to the west of me. That's where it'll cross. And that's, again, just an approximation on the crossing point. But before I go too much further, I have a question for the commissioners and for the KDOT people. I know at some point when at the initial conception of this idea, this vision, there must have been a traffic study done of the volume of traffic. And I would assume at increments along the timeline, perhaps some of those where these other decisions were made to change the course that you want to use. Were traffic studies done then and compared the volume increases that you anticipated? And have we breached those, and when did we breach those traffic volumes? Or did we ever breach them? So that just kind of is just something I think is food for thought, and maybe you have the information and maybe it's not available. But back to my little piece of the world, and I think all of these people behind me here have some asset protection. I think you're seeing the passion for asset protection, and it's their homes and livelihoods. So I think the passion, and I get a little nervous when I start talking, so it's probably not going to be as concise as I'd like for it to be. But I'm a little concerned, and I don't know if everyone understands it, and I think I do now understand that at every point along the green line that you see an elevated traffic exchange, overpass if you will, those are going to be the only points of entrance and exit from that. And every other county road along there is going to become a dead end, and I'll have to correct me if I'm wrong about that. They're going to dead end there, and which would include 20th Street, as near as I can tell. But it's the problem with the scaling on this map, and I know you explained that it's not in great detail, and maybe a better map, a more detailed map would enlighten us more. But I think that's a lot of county real estate that gets shifted and it's going to be difficult to navigate for the farmers, as the lady said, and moving their tractors around, and the other farmers and moving their cattle and that sort of thing around. So I think those are big concerns. And I guess I'll kind of close it out. There's some other questions here, but some of these very astute people behind me have already covered a great deal of territory that I was going to cover. But I have this question, because I've asked some people that I think were in the know to some degree. Who has the final say? And you just explained that it's not in this panel. Is it KDOT? And that's the answer I got was it's probably KDOT has the final say in which this goes, which route is taken. And if that's true, am I just up here exercising futility or in all of these people, or is it baked into the cake already? And if it is there a way to unbake that cake?
When we started the meeting, we told you that we came here to listen, and that's why we're here. We're listening, and we'll take the information back. The cake has not been baked yet.
Okay, that is,
We're here to listen.
yeah, and I understand.
That's the only reason that we have decided we've come here.
That's a good answer, and I like hearing that answer. Because unbaking a cake can sometimes be really difficult, most of the time.
No, the cake hasn't been baked.
Okay, really good. Well, I think there's some people back there a lot smarter than me. I think I'll turn it over to them. Thank you all.
Thank you.
For answering.
Thomason won't take that long, I just have a couple of questions. So, Chris Hemby, I live at 590 East 560 in Pittsburgh, Kansas. The way that I see, it will come through the back of my property.
Could you speak up a little
Oh.
closer to the?
So the highway should come, if it's the preferred route, back of my property. I have about 8 acres. I don't farm, I have beautiful property back there, I'm passionate about it. But something I am interested in, because of all the houses that have been built out there, there's a website that you presented, an email, but what is the biggest impact that we can be heard through? Is it petitions? Is it emailing? What is it so that you can hear? Because there's not very many people here. And if we go back to 2001, 1999, whenever you guys started this process, I think I heard like 600 votes, 700 votes that were considered into this, approving it in these different cities. And we have over 20,000 people in Pittsburgh. It's a very small percentage. So how do we get the information to you to really help you?
I'm gonna turn that over to Vanessa and let her address.
Sorry, you're standing, so I made eye contact with you.
No, that's fine.
So use the email. Right now, the most effective way for any citizen, concerned public member, governing official, use the email. And I'll put it up here again, just so that way people can see it. It's engagement@ksdotike.org. That is the most effective and efficient way to submit your questions, your concerns, etc. We are turning them around as fast as we can. Y'all have been very busy on your email, and we appreciate that. So it's taken us a hot minute to get responses back out to you, but we are in progress on that.
So then the other part of that is, and I appreciate that, we'll definitely encourage, and I know many of us have talked about, we'll make this live so that more than 600, 700 people are aware. The other thing is, lost my train of thought. So Kansas Department of Transportation, I've heard you guys say this many times, your priority is getting people from point A to point B in Kansas through points quickly and efficiently, safely, right? So Joplin's just that way, not too far. Kansas City's not too far right there. I can, in my vehicle, drive from Joplin to Kansas City, not stop at all. I can hold bathroom breaks, I can not stop for gas or anything like that. That means I can not spend a dime in Kansas. How does that help Kansas? We're gonna spend maybe 400 million on this project, and you're gonna have many of me just go right through Kansas, not spend a dime, which then makes me think you guys are gonna eventually not have a job, right? Because Kansas is gonna fail because we're not spending money here to put into the highways. And Missouri, their highways aren't that great, but man, I can get from point A to point B really quickly. Oklahoma, I can get from point A to point B really quickly. Texas, I can, and their highways are horrible if you've traveled a lot. So I just want to know, how is Kansas really thinking about putting money into their bank accounts to support this? Just because we take this highway and move it over here, we're not really growing. We are shifting. This town's going to die, this town's going to succeed, same amount of money is going to be spent, except 400 million extra is going to be spent from Kansas and not recouped. I do not see it being recouped. And our transportation average is going to diminish over this year. So those trucks that you're thinking are gonna come through here over the next 2 to 3 years are going down. I see it in the transportation industry. Carloads are going down, trucks are going down. So really, this is the time to start building the highway, because you're not gonna see as many trucks as you will as you see the market hopefully take an increase. So I just want you to really think about that. How are we spending our Kansas dollars? One more point, this is for the city. So we'll probably move if this place comes through. Hopefully we'll sell it to somebody that doesn't know what's going on, same as we did, and get our money worth, because our property value is gonna go down the tank. So it says in the 2010 consensus here, which I know you guys need to do some work on this, that there's an abundance of houses in Pittsburgh, Frontenac, Arma area to get into. So city of Pittsburgh, you have a lot of work on your plate to figure out how to fit the community that's here in houses, beautiful houses, into other houses. How are you gonna do that? I would start working on that right now, because you already have a problem. We need houses in Pittsburgh, and you're gonna need a lot more quickly.
We're quite aware of that,
Yeah.
and we're working on it very diligently, we really are. But, it takes time.
It does,
takes
yes.
some time. You just don't, first of all, you gotta find builders. And
Yeah.
we don't have a lot of builders in Pittsburgh. And the cost of housing today is so much more than it was 5 years ago.
Exactly.
As you're aware. But we are working really diligently on that.
Well, be prepared, your guys' jobs are gonna get even harder because you're gonna try to keep people in Pittsburgh, and then you're gonna try to find houses. But if the business is gonna shift that way, you're probably not gonna need to find those houses. People won't be here.
I'm Chuck Eckert. I live in Frontenac now. I've lived in Crawford County and Pittsburgh all my life in this area. Have businesses here in Pittsburgh, and hopefully we try to be successful. What I've noticed on the map that they had up there and the other literature they've had, this west bypass is 98 lane miles and $308 million in 2021 dollars. About $3 million a lane mile. And they're talking about 4 lanes, so it's $12 million a mile of road. They want to do this 160 extension. And it's gonna go out 2 miles west there. Until they spend another $100 million, that road will have no place to go. If they start at the north end and come down, yes, there's 36 lane miles there, and it costs $100 million for that stretch of road. And then 69 Highway will dump onto 160 and come back down to the State Park
Chuck,
corner.
could we get that map back up on the stage, on the, what you're talking about?
Okay. If they start up there north of Arma, or build the 160 extension, they start up there north of Arma, it's 36 lane miles up there, which would be 9 miles. And it costs $100 million in 2021 numbers. And then 69 Highway will go on that west bypass up to 160 and then come back down to the State Park corner and then go up the existing road. If they spend another $76 million, they can extend it on up to 126 Highway, that 4 miles, I think it is, in there. And then they'll take 160, or all the 69 traffic, and dump it out on 126, which is a little narrow 2-lane road. And the project wouldn't be complete until they do the south phase, which is another 36 lane miles, and that's $117 million. And until they have a commitment to do that, they're building a road that's not gonna be used. The people talked about the Pleasanton bypass. There's 2 bypasses in Pleasanton. They built one about 20 years ago, and I don't know the exact time, but it was right on the east edge of Pleasanton, a nice little 2-lane concrete road. And then when they made the 4-lane, they moved over a half mile onto the east and abandoned that road that was maybe 10 years old and built a new one a half mile east of that. And so now Pleasanton, I call it, has 2 bypasses. And that first one, I don't know the dollar amount, but is $17 million sticks in my mind is what that project cost. And so we just kind of threw away that $17 million for using it. And it looks to me like this 160 extension is going to be a similar project, and especially if we decide in a couple years or 5 years that we don't want the west bypass. Now we've got a nice 4-lane road 2 miles long that'll go nowhere. I did some rough looking at the east bypass, and now that we've spent a lot of money and have a nice 4-lane road around Arma, where that east bypass would tie in north of Frontenac, that would cut that road down from 98 lane miles to 62 lane miles. And that'd be $186 million in 2021 dollars to have a 4-lane road all around Pittsburgh. It'd be on the east side instead of the west side, but that would give the Pittsburgh Industrial Park an access, and the hospital an access, and PSU an access to that. And that would just be coming in right north of the ambulance barn and the little industrial park that Frontenac has there. And it misses, and like I say, and they just, right now, they're drawing, it goes in within about a half mile of that now. Goes east of Arma and then back west within a half mile of the old the current 4-lane. And I think before we spend any money turning dirt, we really need to look this project over and decide what's really best for the city and for the community. Because I really hate to see a bunch of money wasted on a project that may not ever get used. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I'm going to make this short because I know a lot of us are probably ready to get going. My name is Cooper Brown. I was raised here my entire life, and it was brought up in the last meeting about somebody said that we asked for this. Well, I'm 23 years old, and I wasn't even born whenever this all started, so I would never even got the chance to have an opinion on this matter at all. And another thing, too, just from an economic standpoint, what would entice people my age to stay here and bring our new businesses and new business ideas into Crawford County and Pittsburgh itself if this western bypass was to be made, because all the money would be going away. So I don't see where, from an economic standpoint, it would be lucrative for me to build a business here right now if that westward bypass was to be made. And my last point I'd like to make too, from that you guys said back in 2021 was whenever the Pitt State meeting was held. I'm not saying that did not happen, but me personally, I attended there. I'm a hometown person. I can promise you if it was publicized better, I would have been there. I can promise you that. So, thank you very much.
Good evening, Mayor and members of the commission and our friends from KDOT. Thank you for being here. I'm Kevin Mitchelson. Sorry. I'm Kevin Mitchelson. I live at 209 Elmwood Drive. I'm involved in the Highway 69 Association, as many of you know. I served as member and chairman of the Highway Advisory Commission, and I'm very impressed with KDOT and the level of professionalism and objectivity that they take at these projects. And certainly on behalf of the U.S. Highway 69 Association, we appreciate our relationship with KDOT and want to continue to work with you to see that Highway 69 is built as a 4-lane road wherever you objectively determine to put that. Now, I, like former Mayor Beasley, I grew up a couple blocks from the bypass. I've lived in that neighborhood literally my entire life. I believe personally that the construction of the new Crawford County corridor on the west alignment is in Pittsburgh and Crawford County's best interest, and I'd like to explain a couple of reasons why. My goal tonight is not to see how many of my friends, neighbors, and clients I can upset, but I may do that, and for that I'm sorry. But I try to be objective about this, and we work very hard. This is not a 10-year or 20-year effort. The effort to build US Highway 69 as a 4-lane freeway from Johnson County to I-44 has been going on for 70 years. And the problem I have a little bit is that it takes decades to build highways. And KDOT works very hard to plan ahead and build the right road in the right place to make sure that they do the job that those roads are intended to do. And we can't, they can't, none of us can change that plan every time there's a local election and something happens. We're 70 years into this effort, and we've got to continue to work and encourage KDOT
beg KDOT to build us a four-lane highway. Now, I happen to believe, in my experience working with KDOT over the last 20 years, is that building highways is the best economic development. I firmly believe that Pittsburgh has an artificial boundary on the west end, and it's the current bypass. If we build the western alignment, I think Pittsburgh will continue to grow west. That road comes by the Frontenac Industrial Park, it comes by the Pittsburgh Airport Industrial Park, and it goes south. And once we get into Cherokee County, y'all are spending a bunch of money in Cherokee County to bring the road up from I-44. We want it to come all the way up here, and we're grateful for the construction you've done. But, you know, when the bypass was built in the late 50s, I think it opened the year before I was born, but I've lived there since I was 4 years old. I doubt that everybody was pleased that US 69 wasn't going to go down Broadway anymore. But look what Pittsburgh's done. It's grown to it. And I'm sorry, folks, this is not Pleasanton. God bless them. Pleasanton's a lovely community. Yeah, we all stopped at the little ice cream store going through there. But this is not Pleasanton. Frontenac is not Pleasanton. Frontenac is going to continue to thrive. We're still going to go up the existing the existing alignment. We're still going to buy our cars. We're still going to stop and buy gas at Bose. The semis don't do that. What that western alignment will do, will take the trucks from I-44 and take the trucks from FedEx and the trucks coming from Wichita and get them off our road and get them around Pittsburgh, because they're not spending money in Pittsburgh. They're not going to spend money in Pittsburgh. They want to get where they're going. And I think if we build that road, in fact, we will get economic development. We'll get more trucks coming south out of the what do you call it, not transload, the facilities at Edgerton Gardner. We're going to get more business. We're going to have companies that are going to be willing to build on a good four-lane highway, and there's no places to build a plant along the existing alignment. That's not going to happen. But if we go west, we've got great potential for economic development, and you've already got families and construction companies planning to build residential developments west of the existing bypass. So I'm in favor of the Crawford County corridor, and I hope that KDOT will continue to do its fair and objective and professional job and figure out what's the best route for this road. And that's what we're asking you to do. You talk about Fort Scott, but look at the growth on the new highway at Fort Scott. I understand the problems on the east end of Parsons, but Parsons continues to thrive. Let's not beat up on Parsons. There are things happening in Parsons, Kansas, that if you go over there, there are businesses downtown that have continued to grow, continue to expand, and look at the growth out to the new road. And I believe that's what's going to happen here. We build freeways. We want this road built. If you build on the current alignment, and I'm not going to fall on my sword and say, oh, hell, don't do that. If that's objectively what you all determine, we'll support it. You know that. You know that, Wayne. You know that, Scott. You know that. But does Pittsburgh really want to lose 20th Street and 9th Street going into Lincoln Park and Quincy and Olive Street on the bypass? Because that's what you're asking for. That's what you're asking for on a freeway. And I just don't think we really know what we're asking for. I think this is about moving trucks from I-44 to Kansas City and moving trucks from Kansas City to I-44, and I think it will improve the economy of southeast Kansas. We're not going to jump out west to go north to Kansas City. We're going to go up the existing road. We're going to buy our gas at Bose. We're going to buy our cars either down on the south end or up on the north end. We're going to go to the casino on the existing road, which, by the way, is one of the busiest city streets we have. Thank God, Mayor, KDOT's paying to maintain it, but if you look at the traffic, it is a busy, busy city street. And it's going to continue to be a busy city street, whether it's 2 lanes or 4 lanes. And I think that's contrary to what KDOT's trying to accomplish here. I want to just briefly address or talk about the Phase 3 road. If you all determine in your analysis that the western alignment is still the best place to build this road, and we'll respect whatever decision KDOT makes. You all asked us, we didn't make up Phase 3, you know that, Wayne. But when you said KDOT wants to build Phase 3, we went to DC and got you the money. And we'd like to see it spent well. If you're gonna stick on the west alignment, then the western expansion of Highway 160 makes perfect sense. It's not a road to nowhere. If you're not gonna build the west alignment, you're gonna have to tell us. If you're gonna build it, you're gonna have to tell us. We have been telling people where the preferred route is for 20 years. If you didn't know about it, you didn't ask your realtor, or your realtor didn't tell you, or your neighbor did what the fellow over here, the lady over here said, I'm gonna sell it without telling you, because I want you to buy my property, even though there may be a highway come through here. But nobody who's asked about the western alignment has been lied to and not told. I will say that. We've been nobody who's asked was not told. The highway alignment routes have been in the paper. They've been at public meetings that were not private, secret meetings. They were always publicized. KDOT does a good job of telling the community when you're coming to town. So anyway, this is the culmination of 70 years, and I guess I'm probably not going to see this in my lifetime. Maybe I would. I'd love to see it, but we need a 4-lane highway, and I think the western alignment still makes sense. You all will make that determination. We'll respect your decision. Thank you.
Any other comments?
I live on 200th Street.
I'm sorry?
I live on 200th Street.
Would you come up and talk?
Oh, I'm sorry.
And state your name and your
My
address.
name is Paula Rand Eller, and I live on 200th. And I know a lot of these people that live there. We have land out there. We have homes. You're talking about coming out there and cutting off roads. I had so many things written down. I know I got some answers. If you go out there, I'm sorry, I'm just, I get a little frustrated there for a second. To preferably, when they say preferably go to the west, there's land out there. I mean, like Cody said, there's floodplains out there. We have land out there that, what are you gonna do with? I mean, how much are you gonna give for it? I mean, is that all already taken care of? You've got this square foot of house, it's worth this much. You've got this much land, it's worth that much. I mean, is that how you just offer us a certain amount? For those? Fair market value. Or do you go by our property, like our property taxes?
Go through your questions and we'll.
Okay, well, that's the main thing. I mean, we have that out there. When everybody says preferably go to the west. There's no buildings, or there's no, businesses growing out there, is because we have land out there. We're sitting on the land. We've built out there. If the highway comes out there, I mean, just like everybody else says, I'm not gonna repeat, but I just wanna know how much, are you gonna actually give? What did somebody say? There was 256 between structures and locations? If you went to the west. Nobody talks about how many people does it affect if you go down focus on the main highway that we have now? How many does it affect if you go to the east? Compared to all of us that you're affecting, to the west. That's what I wanna know. petition. I was involved with the petitions also, getting the names. And how many, do you guys really look at that? How many do you need? You know, to keep that from happening to the west? And that's all I want to know.
So I just want to provide some clarity, if I might, concerning the petition issue. We welcome your feedback. And if a petition and that drive is a way that encourages your neighbors and your citizens to be engaged in the process, then by all means, collect them. We don't, as KDOT, have a specific process or procedure that says if we collect X number of signatures, that means the project stops. That's not how the process works. But we do encourage you to go through that process because that's feedback for us, right? And that feedback matters. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here talking with you all tonight and continuing to have meetings with different governing bodies so that we can have and re-engage communities in this conversation.
Sorry, I just had a brief question. Debbie Brock, myself, and I'm sure many others want to know the cost of the 3 different routes. When can you guys provide that to us? The number of properties that will be impacted by each route and the end cost. I'd like to know how many homes would have to be acquired as well as businesses. Because I think that really that's important for all cities and citizens to have a better informed decision. Right, yeah, current values, not 23 years ago. Do you know when we can expect that answer?
We're gonna take this feedback and we're gonna look at the old studies and, you know, some of those have been some time ago and some things have changed. So that would be off whatever was at that time. And so with those studies, we had, cost and we'll have to review those and inflate those up to those different alignments. I think back when they were close, but, we'll have to review that information and get back with you.
But I just would like to know the timeframe as to when we'll expect updated data.
I can't give you an exact timeline. You know, we're trying to get this discussion going as we proceed to the next steps, maybe some more public outreach, obviously. And so we would show that information at that time of the different alternatives and then on to local consult. So we're not going to be, you know, constructing things tomorrow.
I think maybe
So
the
these
best
studies
avenue
take-
would be to email your questions now.
Yeah,
It's getting
that-
late and, yeah.
That's where, you know, we'd like the engagement, but these studies take several years. And if we reopen the study, you could probably expect 18 months to 2 years to reanalyze everything. And then, you know, that study's not cheap. So that could be several $1 million to reanalyze it. But anyway.
Thank you.
That's
I
where
think
we're
at this point, we're rehashing a lot of things. You've got the email, you've got a whole bunch of information, and unless someone has a very burning question,
A new burning question.
a new burning question,
Okay, you guys keep saying that you do let everyone know about these meetings and stuff. I want to know how many people found out about this meeting from anywhere but social media. Did anyone find out about it other than social media? Somebody told me about it. Someone told you about it? Did KDOT put out a press release or something? Okay, so where does the press release go?
I wasn't, I was shaking my head
Oh,
like I'm
okay.
listening to you. Go ahead, because I can tell you the answer.
Okay, well, we
okay.
wanna know where this is, because we can't find this
Sure.
information.
So this is a different style of public meeting than what perhaps you're thinking about. So we did not publicize that we were going to be appearing as an agenda item on city council or county commission meetings, because that is not, we were asking to come and make a presentation to re-engage, right? When we say, when we're doing a public meeting that KDOT is hosting, it is advertised in the newspaper, there are public notices put out. Depending on what's going on, there may be radio outreach, there may be a ditty on the local TV station. So there's two different things that we're
Okay,
talking
Did
about
you keep
there.
a record of how you guys did those other meetings, like how you guys advertised, like, I'm just asking.
Yeah, the 2019 and 2021 local consult meetings, absolutely. We did social media, I'm sure we did public outreach through newspapers, et cetera, so all the things that we talked about, yeah.
If we email, will we be able to find out when the meetings are through that email?
If you email the engagement at ksdot.ike.org, we will gladly add you without question to the local consult mailing list in terms of email list for 2023, which will be happening in October in Iola. And as we move forward with any additional public outreach around the bypass conversation, we would include you in those email announcements as well. Okay? So just in the email, say, add me to the list.
And just remember, this was our first steps. You know, we haven't come out since 2010. We have just got word we received some earmarks. So that our first steps are usually talking to the local officials. And so you're informed of what's going on, and that's where we're at. This wasn't really meant for a public meeting
But I
format to
think
go through all the
You've
details.
accomplished two things
Yeah.
tonight. One is you've spoken to the local forum, the governing body, and you've also allowed the citizens to come forward, and we certainly appreciate that. And with that, I'm gonna cut off any further questions.
I have a question.
Ask them, just ask them
Yeah, the
privately.
KDOT. I get a monthly report from KDOT, from Kim, I think it is. And she lets us know what projects
Yeah,
are happening in the county.
one of the ladies in my office publishes that for me to let you guys know what's going on, kind of what the status of the jobs are, how much money I think we spent, what the upcoming projects are that we're gonna go out.
But this project's not on that monthly report. so-
No, this is not on it. That's just current construction
Okay,
projects
construction
we have
project,
going
yeah.
on, or maybe one that's gonna come up in a month or two.
Right.
Yeah.
So when this construction starts, then that would be on that report, monthly report.
Yes, it would
All right,
be.
thank you.
It would be. The 69 stuff is on there.
Yes.
Some of your other little bridge jobs and things
Right.
like that. That was just one way for me to try and keep you in the loop and let you know what's going on in your community.
All right, thank you.
So you actually read it?
Yeah, I do.
Okay, are there any non-agenda reports or requests? Seeing none, we'll call for adjournment.
So
What about
move.
your moment?
No moments tonight.
So move, adjourn. Second, and all.
Still need to vote on that.
I didn't hear a vote.
Y'all said aye.
You need to vote to adjourn.
It's over.
You had a first,
vote
you need a
to adjourn.
second.
Chuck seconded.
You just need to vote.
Yeah.
All in favor, say aye.